Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this 2:15, 25-minute, very quick run on Feed the Soil. We're here to talk about innovations in composting for soil and crop health. My name is Matt. I work for the Organic Research Centre and I run the Agroecology project. There's loads of information on agroecology about composting, different approaches, technical videos, all sorts of stuff. We've got a tent over there. Come see us. Go to the website. Today, I'm joined by the very fashionable, very trendy Julia Cooper, who is Head of Research for the Organic Research Centre and long-time soil scientist. And also Tom Knowles from Village Farm, who just today was interviewed by the Food and Farming Countryside Commission. So he's famous now, which is fabulous. So we're going to dive into the topic of composting, looking at it from a research perspective and a project that Julia's working on that's really exciting. It's just kind of in its infancy. And then Tom, who is sort of Mr. Compost at lots of different levels, is going to really dive into how he's putting things together on a farm at different scale, at quite a low cost, and with, well, I think really good results. So that's enough from me. I will hand over to you, Julia.
Okay, great. Oh, I need that thing, yeah. Yeah, so I'm just going to give you a quick intro to this project called Feed the Soil. So as Matt said, this is really in its infancy. So we don't have a lot of results yet to share, but I just want to tell you a little bit about what we're trying to do with the project. And hopefully we can have a bit of a chat in the questions more about what we're hoping to learn and what you guys can share with us about your approaches to composting. So Feed the Soil is a project that we're doing in collaboration with the land gardeners. So yeah, I'm Julia Cooper. I'm a soil scientist. I've studied carbon and nitrogen cycling in soils for most of my career, particularly organic methods of managing soils for better carbon and nitrogen cycling. The land gardeners, probably many of you know, is real passionate advocates for building soil health using composting in all sorts of innovative ways, really great communicators around how we need to take care of our soil. So we're working together on this, and it's really about building the knowledge base, building the evidence base, and really helping to provide guidance to the farming and gardening world on how to better feed the soil. And feed the soil is kind of an organic phrase that I remember from, when I first learned about organic in the 80s. We always talk about the organic ethos, feed the soil, not the plant, right? So keep the soil healthy and vibrant and alive, and the soil will feed your plant, rather than the more conventional approach of how much NPK does my crop need this year. So that's kind of why we call it Feed the Soil. So like I said, it's about building a network of composters, and we're actually encouraging you to sign up today. This is a sheet. This is from Organic Research Center. This is a sheet where you can sign up in general with ORC to join our research networks. But when you sign up, you could indicate particularly if you're interested in Feed the Soil or compost or something, and we'll know that you want to be linked in with our network, and we'll reach out to you in the coming months with what we're doing. Some of these are lying around in the chairs, so scan the QR code and do that. We want to build a virtual hub for research and knowledge exchange. So we know just at an event like Groundswell that you'll see dozens of different companies and organizations promoting different ways to feed the soil using organic amendments, biostimulants, compost teas, extracts, etc. So we want to kind of build a hub where we can kind of compile all the information and evidence and guidance on how to do that better. And then really, not right away, but later on, we're going to, based on our sort of conversations with the network and some of the literature review I'm doing now, come up with some really targeted questions that we might be able to answer in field trials. So start to do some targeted, sort of more robust on-farm testing of some of the different approaches, like we saw yesterday in this tent when we had that talk about on-farm research. So that's kind of the things we're doing. So answering questions about impacts of composting methods and all these different areas that different individuals and groups might have an interest in, things like the soil microbiology, soil physical properties, greenhouse gas emissions. So, whenever you decompose an organic material, there will be emissions somewhere along the line. When are they happening? What's the best way to manage that process to minimize emissions? Sort of corollary with that is impacts on soil carbon sequestration, impacts on crop quality, these other things. Farm profit, of course, bottom line needs to pay, and yields, of course. So what we've started is doing a bit of a review of the academic literature. I'm an academic at heart. I love to dig into the hundreds and hundreds of papers out there published on composting. Also looking at what's been done within the UK. So that's this mapping bit of the work, and building the evidence base. So basically looking through that current evidence on various methods of composting and managing organic materials, and then highlighting gaps and questions. And this is what I wanted to show you. So this is kind of my sort of academic-y bit of it. How do we categorize composting methods? I know if I put this up here, people will immediately pick holes in it. So go ahead and do that. Maybe afterwards you can tell me what you think of my composting taxonomy. The stuff on your left there is sort of not composted, right? So if you just took some organic materials, stacked it up, left it, you might leave it not very long and then spread it in the field. That is the fresh materials. You might stack it for quite a while. That's well-rotted manure. If you're familiar with RB209, they kind of tell you what nutrients you might expect to provide to a crop from those methods. I've put them there because when I'm reviewing literature, I'm interested to compare against those methods, some of these other methods. Then I've divided into aerobic and anaerobic methods. So I've only got bokashi under anaerobic. Maybe there's another one there I don't know about. Tell me if I have. And then I've got all these ones under aerobic, which I'm sure Tom would probably have some comments on. I put indoors, kind of that classical method that Sir Albert Howard developed in India years ago. I've got hot composting, which Tom, I think, is going to talk about. Biodynamic methods, which use some sort of preparation. And then there are Johnson-Su methods. And then at the bottom, that's not really a different aerobic method, but a lot of papers I'm finding are about adding more stuff into those mixes, particularly biochar, minerals, gypsum, etc. So I'm kind of right now working on how we might categorize different ways of processing these organic materials so that when I'm sifting through publications and projects, I kind of know where to put that evidence, really. I can talk more about that after if people are interested in that. And then, of course, we're also going to look at some of the products that are produced, like teas and extracts. So there's a lot to sift through and gather the evidence and information on. So early patterns, just because I thought you'd probably want to know some results. These are not sort of, really robust results, but just my observations from what I've read and what I've known over the years. The biodynamic composting, there's definitely, really interesting effects on soil health and particularly organic carbon. There's some amazing experiments done in Europe, places like Fiebel and in Germany, where they've taken the same feedstocks and run them through a biodynamic method and applied what comes out the end in the field compared to through a sort of an indoor method compared to like just letting them stack and rot, and really amazing studies over, that they've covered over years and years. And they do see those biodynamic compost treatments that get it year after year do have higher soil carbon. And so there's something going on there. Some of these additives are quite interesting, particularly reducing ammonia loss in the process, which is very important policy-wise for people like DEFRA. Not surprisingly, turning a lot, you lose more ammonia. So there's trade-offs there. We know if you turn it more, tend to make your compost faster. But you're also going to lose more ammonia quite often. So that's sort of one that needs to look at more. Maybe if you add some biochar, you can mitigate that. Evidence on teas and extracts, I don't have anything to say. I'm still sort of digging through that, trying to compile that. And then, bokashi, really, there's loads of stuff going on with bokashi here in the UK and globally as well. No shortage of sort of published studies on that. So I'm really looking forward to digging into that more. Agriton, shout out to them. They're sort of leading the research on that here in the UK, and they're just down the alleyway here. So so that's, I think, everything I had to say at the moment, just to start off the discussion.
Great, thanks, Julia. We'll come back with some questions on that. I've got a few of my own just to kind of pick your brains a bit as you start to unfold it. But there's a longer-term research project behind this that's going on. But we had to get Tom in today to give us some really sort of practical advice on things and hopefully some stuff that you can take away. So, Tom, over to you.
Thank you. I'll talk about the things that we do on our farm. So what are we trying to achieve? We are a former dairy, mid-sized, smallish farm, but with limited amount of equipment. So we don't have the massive green machine and the windrow turner that they've got just down the road here. So we need to come up with a different method. So I'm looking at essentially making high quality small batch compost, inoculate, and then get that out essentially through extracts. So I'll go through how I do that broadly, but yeah, basing it on the soil food web approach, marrying the microbe community with the desired plant community, and looking at, from that boosting soil structure, infiltration, and nutrient cycling. So I came up with a plan. Basically, everything had to be human scale. So I'm turning 5 ton over the course of a year, probably 8 ton to 10 ton this year. Just doing it in small batches, sort of 200 to 400 litres, I guess, at a time, up to about a ton, but that can get a bit unwieldy. So it just depends on when we have the material. And I do hot composting, worm compost, and Johnson Sue's, and then I make that into an extract and put it out. But importantly, I'm looking at the batches down the microscope to check what microbes are in there, and generally they're good. Briefly, bokashi, because Julia touched on it. We haven't gone down that route. I'm just a little bit concerned about the amount of plastic for that, so I'm holding off. But it might be something that we'll get to in the future. So essentially, I'll do hot composting. It's fairly quick turnaround, small batches. You can see here on the pallet in a wire cage, so low to get into. You're not spending very much on the kit there, and then turning it a few times, and it's down back to ambient temperature in about a month, and then I tend to leave it on pallets adjacent to other piles, as I'm calling it, to work as a microclimate. So they're all working together, and old piles are feeding into new piles, and cross-pollinating, all that sort of thing. Then typically with the worm compost, I do it at fairly small scale, although I'm testing out bigger and bigger options. You can see the old pheasant feeders doubling up as an option there, and then trialing it under plastic in under a tree or whatever. But essentially I'll use the hot compost that I've made, and then I'll put it through the worms. Then another thing that I'm doing, Johnson Sue bioreactors. You've probably seen the one around, it's a bit further over the other side over there. I have got a slightly different method, which I think is much simpler, easier to load, which is essentially a donut shape. You get the same, if not slightly more, air pockets. And I tend to put that under a tree, leave it for a year or so, and in a moist climate as we have here, it tends to break down. So and then compost extracts, this is the method we use to get it out across the farm, and because you just cannot physically make enough to put across the farm of hot compost. Typically put a mixture of our compost into the bag. We've got an Enduramax compost tea brewer there, and we've got the rolling boil going, and then you can see the top right there, that's sort of the colour of the liquid that comes out. This year we've been using it as a substrate for our foliar feeding of our crops, and so I've done an extra layer of filtering there purely to make sure it doesn't clog up the sprayer. So typically in the past we've used a separate sprayer with wider diameter spray nozzles, but in order to get it out at as many times as possible, especially with the up and down weather that we've had, this is our latest attempt at getting it out there. And then doing the looking at each the batches that we're putting out under the microscope, looking at the bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, looking at where we are in terms, especially fungi is the main thing where we had been historically lacking. So that's we'll aim the Johnson Sioux to get the fungi there, but mix and try and get all the different things there. And so just quickly, I think it's the last slide to say what works, the challenges, and then the future. We've pretty much got our techniques sorted. We're building up an amount that we've got in store, if you like. We're starting to see good higher bricks levels where we're spraying it out versus conventional crop. We're getting higher levels of N on the sap tests that we're doing, nodulation on legumes, and starting to see proper nutrient cycling, which is good. And now we're linking it properly with our foliars. And challenges, obviously the weather, 1 year it's too dry, then it's too wet. But we're just trying to find as many different options to get it out there is where we're at. And in the future, hopefully link with other people nearby, make maybe get a shared windrow turner, perhaps a smaller one that can be moved around, and maybe protein hydrolysates, things like that. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Tom. So before I throw the questions over to the floor, because I'm sure there's lots there, we're trying to sort of run through this, but that's just to kind of give you a scale of where Tom can help you in terms of advice if you're looking to do this. Just to jump back to you, Julia, one of the things I'm sort of curious about is you're doing this research and you're looking to find the unanswered questions, but I'm sort of wondering what you think some of them are that are out there already. This has sort of led to this research being done initially.
Yeah, I think the research, one of the impetuses for the research was that a lot of these methods are being used at sort of smaller scale, garden scale, and we're really interested in how can we scale things up to use these methods sort of at farm scale. And I'm really interested in sort of the where the carbon is going to come from, and if you get to sort of farm scale to build the carbon in soils and build up soil health. So that's kind of what I think we don't quite know yet, how you sort of, I guess, design a system that works for a specific farming system. So hopefully in the project we'll sort of do some case studies on different farming systems and look at kind of carbon balances and how you use a diversity of these approaches to really achieve the good soil health that we're all trying to get to.
And from a research perspective, how do you manage when the compost is different in every site and the materials are different, to get solid results that can then be applied across different farms?
Very challenging. Yeah. So, I mean, I think we're looking at doing sort of a case study approach initially and sort of, just documenting what's working where and start to see some patterns there and maybe formulate hypotheses. Then we might do more of your standard kind of controlled trials where you would, ideally you need the same material to be tested, and that becomes like logistically challenging. So we hope to get there, but I think we'll start by just trying to learn what everyone's doing and what's working, and
Brilliant. Well, there's lots to come on that, guys.
Do you mind if I add something to that?
Yeah.
I would say people want to put their own stuff out. The purpose of composting really is to take away from having to buy inputs. So you want to use materials that you get from your own land or very close by. So perhaps that's to deal with it in a really rigorous scientific way will be challenging, obviously, as you say, but is that necessarily what people want to do themselves?
Yeah. And I've just had a brainwave with when you said that, because what we're interested in is partly the sort of the method. So, you might have bokashi, you might have hot composting, you might have a biodynamic method. And it's true, you could roll it out. The methods are the same around the farms, but they're using their own materials. And actually then you learn and it could be that on a given farm, one method is more appropriate than on another. So you might have solved my dilemma there, Tom. Thanks.
There we go. Answered the questions already. Tom, I've got a few questions for you. One of the things is recipes for the Johnson Sioux, for the hot composting. Kind of, what are you using on farm? What are the volumes, kind of proportions, and what are the alternative materials that people can use if they haven't got that stuff available?
Sure. Yeah. The Johnson Sioux, heavy on the wood chips, sort of 80%, bit of cow manure, maybe horse manure. We've got both available, and then some greens as well. So, I typically do that, mow the lawn and then put that out really quickly just to add a little bit. We've got a wood chipper, a forestry place not that far from us, so we can get things in that are still hot, if you like. There's that kind of thing. Hot compost, we would use what we have at the time. So winter is going to be heavier on the carbon-based materials, so your straw, but it'll be with FIM. And then as you get into spring and summer, you'll have more green material. But it's use what's there, but that's a lower amount of carbon and higher amount of.
So that green material could be some chopped up herbal ley or something. Or
Yeah. Whatever you got, weeds, whatever you want. Try to keep the seeds out, obviously, but where you can. But
and then when you're turning it from the Johnson Sioux into the liquid compost, are you adding any kind of mineral into that process? I hear that term used a lot at that phase. People just say, I put the mineral in. And so they might be using some charcoal or some wood ash or something. Yeah,
I would tend to put that maybe in at the active phase, just to be sure. But you can do it in both ways. Yeah.
Are you using wood ash or?
Yeah, we've got wood burners, so we would use some of that. But
And is that absolutely critical part of the recipe?
Lots of people would say yes. The jury's out for me personally, but if you've got it, why not use it? And likewise, you might want to put in a little bit of clay material that you might have. So up to sort of 5-10%, things like that.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah. And you're doing this by hand. What I love is that you're doing it at a small scale, but then obviously because you're composting it, you can then apply that across a large space of land. What's the labour levels required for you to do this versus if you found a good supplier with a biocomplete compost and you could buy it in instead?
Oh, okay. Well, there's a couple of points there. I would compare it against buying in synthetic N. I would say it's probably much cheaper. I would, to make a batch, which I would then use over the course of a growing season, would probably a day's time over the course of making it. So times that by your hourly rate, and you've got your cost there. But maybe there's going to be limited biocomplete compost sellers out there. Land gardeners, pretty expensive, but maybe not for an agricultural scenario. Other people like Soil Ecology Lab and the Goop, NutriBridge, they're probably a little bit more expensive, but maybe not that much more. So it's favourable, and it's your own. You're trying to cycle your own microbes and sort of repopulate that in a positive manner, in a positive feedback loop. So you hopefully over time you will compound the positivity that way. So
Brilliant, thank you. So we're running out of time, guys. I'm conscious, probably a lot of questions. So let's open it up to the floor. Right in the middle, we've got centre middle. The mic coming to you.
It should be ready to go, I think. Yeah.
It is, yeah, sorry. Probably a question to Tom. You said that you're kind of comparing it to kind of bought in nitrogen, but then you're extracting rather than nutrients from your compost. So is it the biology that you think is more important than the nutrients that you're putting on?
For us, yes, because we're a historic dairy, so we have decent levels of carbon. Trying to be general for an audience, I think you're wanting to do both. And so, yeah, for me specifically, the microbes are the most important thing because we already have a decent level of carbon in the soil. But yeah, we want the nutrient cycling from the microbes specifically. But if you're starting from a low base, you want both the humic content and the microbes to get there. So, yeah. Does that answer? Is that okay? Yeah.
Great. Next question.
I'm Rupert Phillips from the Friendly Farmers. We produce a fair amount of compost on an agricultural scale. My question is, do you think that using the soil food web benchmark, which is obviously almost global now, is achievable to the people talk biocomplete, but that biocomplete could be completely contextual, and therefore how achievable is it to get that level, or what level is that within your compost for your specific needs?
Good question. Tough
Yeah,
one,
you're
Tom.
right. I think it is difficult, and so you need to learn how to do it. And there are, yeah. So it's you've got to put in the work and keep practicing. It's not going to be your first. Well, I feel like I'm. Well, yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Matt asked, is there loads of it about? And the answer is no. There's not a lot. There are a few suppliers, but and the way they're saying to put it out is via an extract, or a seed coating or something like that. You're not going to have the level to spread over a huge area. There isn't, that doesn't exist at the moment. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Unfortunately, folks, we're out of time. We're just skimming along the surface here. Please feel free to come and chat with Julia and Tom afterwards, or come and join us for a drink over the agroecology tent. Thanks very much.